Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the session. Today, I'll be talking about ways you can increase customer engagement, self-service, and voice commerce with Amazon Alexa through use cases for two iconic brands. Now, what they have in common is their desire to serve and delight their customers and reduce friction wherever they are. I'm Jonathan Patrizio from Mobiquity with a number of my friends here. We're a digital consultancy that builds cloud and mobile apps for customers and users to improve their daily lives. I'm very lucky also to talk to people every day looking for new ways to increase their engagement with customers through conversational AI. Now, you might be thinking about ways you can devise your own voice strategy from the business side, or perhaps you're thinking about building something new in your IT organization. But I hope today will inspire you to think of new ways you can increase customer engagement with conversational AI and Amazon Alexa. Okay, so today we'll be looking at the common challenges that voice assistants pose for customer engagement, and then we're going to go talking about some use cases, a couple of use cases, one in the area of enabling self-service for home chefs that want to prepare the perfect turkey. I hope there's going to be no protesters amongst you guys. Then we'll be looking at tackling voice commerce with an Alexa skill and the ways you can actually tackle voice commerce and make a seamless payment, using Amazon Pay. What you'll walk away with, I hope today, is in ways you can increase engagement and think about your own customers and ways that they might indeed use voice assistants in the moments of their life where they potentially their hands are actually occupied, or they're simply in a place where they can't get to their phones or their other modes of interface. I think there's really a bright future for self-service and automation through voice assistants. And so today at the end, I hope you'll be thinking about ways that you can get started with building voice assistants and things you should be thinking about to create great experiences. All right, so let's get started with this story. Now, at Mobiquity, we've been building skills for the likes of Johnson & Johnson, IHG, and across many different sorts of verticals. And through those experiences since 2016, we've learned an awful lot. There's a lot to learn in this space. Now, the broad use of of voice assistants actually does span modes of smart speakers and mobile phones. It also covers Google Assistant, Siri, Cortana, and Bixby is coming into the realm as well. Today, we're, however, going to be focusing on the use cases around Amazon Alexa, but I think what you'll see is that things that we're talking about do apply to voice assistants across the entire space. So let's start our journey by just briefly looking at the evolution of interfaces and how brands and customers have interacted over the years. So up to the 1970s, people actually were using traditional interfaces like TV, telephone, radio. They were broadcasts, and they were mostly in one direction from the company to the consumer. And if they were lucky, that consumer would pick up the phone and call them. Then in the 1980s, icons and GUIs really started to help you envision how you actually would interact with systems in a visual way. Now, in the 1980s, we built on top of that, and it really opened up accessibility of information to everybody. So that by the 2000s, when we started to think about mobile, they exploded onto the scene in 2000, and about 2007, the iPhone came along, and we started to interact using Zoom and Pinch. And actually, that was sort of the beginning of voice assistants in some way, or at least making it more democratized. The fact that you actually would have a voice assistant on your phone in the guise of Siri, and you'd be able to talk to that voice assistant. So it's only been relatively recently that we've actually had what's called intent-based applications. These are that on the other end of that device is actually not necessarily a human, it's potentially a voice assistant, an automated assistant. And I think the challenge now is how do we make that voice assistant really powerful and useful? But if you think about it, all those modalities, I think we often fall into the trap of going, okay, here's a new mode of interface. Let's just work on that one type of engagement with that one interface. But I also think it's very important to think about all of these interfaces being at our disposal, and which is the best mode of interface to actually interact with these systems. Oops. Apologies for that. Well, I'd like to see, just quickly, a show of hands. Who has an Amazon Echo in their houses right now? So I'm actually seeing the vast majority, at least 3/4 of you. Put your hands up if you have actually 2 or more devices. Okay, so that's really impressive too. That's about the same number, maybe slightly less. How about 3 or more? Okay, really incredible. And you know, when we actually come to it, Alexa is really being built in everywhere. And I think we're really beginning to get used to Alexa being, you know, wherever we are. In fact, there are times when I think of saying Alexa, you know, in places where she isn't. I saw a really good blog, and I do encourage you to read this. It's by Paul Kutzinger, who interviewed Mark Cuban, and it was about the state of ambient computing. And one of the things he sort of noted there was that in the last year, in 2018 alone, that the number of customers interacting on a daily basis with their Echoes is actually, you know, has actually doubled. There are over 100 million of these devices, which I think reflects something of what I've just seen in this room. And remember as well, smart speakers cover the realm of devices, not just Amazon Alexa, but Google Assistant. HomePod is coming onto the fore. So this is really a trend that I think is here to stay. Yet, you know, when I think about it, wouldn't it be nice if I could actually talk to that smart speaker and get somebody on the other end of that smart speaker and be able to have a conversation? For example, you know, moving your cable service, or perhaps you want to close an account or find some new plan, and it's still not quite there yet. I get frustrated when, for example, I'm calling up and I'm on a phone tree. And actually, I know it's really a bit of a time sink because sometimes, you know, I'm busy during the day. There's only so many hours in the day. You navigate different phone trees. You sometimes get disconnected, or you end up actually saying giving your problem multiple times. Now, from the business perspective, we're being pressed to actually do more and more with less. And we also want to be poised, sort of take advantage of those places and those times where you can actually really start to engage with your consumers. So I think it's a really good time to think about this. You know, I saw in the room so many people have these smart assistants, and yet mostly we're still using those assistants to play music or get the weather or traffic. And there's actually a lot more that can, I think, be done with that. But what are the sort of headwinds to building these really great experiences? And I think they would probably be shared by a lot of people who actually build these voice experiences. So I think some of the top challenges are listed here, and I wouldn't say all of them, but you know, the ones that came to my mind were basically lack of convenient access. Well, what does that mean? In the IVR world, how often do you navigate phone tree menus to try to find the place where you actually speak to the right department? You know, I'm actually having to self-classify my problem instead of just me using my natural voice and saying, I have a problem, can you help me move my service to another address? And for them to figure out who I should be speaking to. Also, that convenient access. You know, if I'm actually wanting to change service, I actually have to think about picking up the phone and calling them at a particular time of day. Also, I think you'll often find that you have a problem of one size fits all, which means that, you know, it never seems to be that my particular problem is answered by that first menu. I always have to dig around. I often talk to somebody, they then transfer me, and it can be really frustrating. There's also, I think now, fierce competition that, you know, with all of those modalities ranging from TV and broadcast media, and then you have all of the different types of interface with online, with mobile, it can be actually hard to differentiate your brand, to do something really good across all those different modalities. Also, with the introduction of things like the Alexa Skills Kit and all of the development tools, it's relatively easy to make something, right? And it's easy to make some kind of voice experience, but to make something that really differentiates your brand and does something unique and really compelling and useful still remains a bit of a struggle. The other thing that we really think about hard at Mobiquity is truly understanding your users. And we'll talk more about this, but it seems like when you're actually in a company and you have a particular brand, you'll think about promoting and pushing that in a certain way. And yet we much more are able ourselves during our sort of journey in life to figure out where the frustrations are. But connecting those two, I think, is often very difficult. You can look at information and data, but it's actually finding that true understanding of the user journey can be hard. Once you've done all of that, you still have to then turn it around and create something which is really good in terms of voice design. Good voice design is quite different from good visual or mobile design or good online design. So we're going to talk a little bit about things there that I think are very key in creating a great experience. And then finally, even if you've got a great design, there's going to be some due diligence and some real perseverance you have to take part in order to drive adoption. I mean, remember, we're trying to change behavior. We're used to pulling out our phones and looking at those phones to do certain tasks. But what we're trying to do is make it so that there are places in time and space where you, for example, are using your voice, the most natural way to interact with something, to do something that will be easier than potentially pulling out your phone or sitting down at the desktop. Let me take you for a moment on those journeys, which I think is important. So if you think about your own daily routine, we all sort of get up in the morning. We might be using multiple modalities, not just voice, right? When I start my day, I'm often looking, first I'm telling my alarm to shut off, and then telling Alexa to turn off my alarm. I even actually feel a bit more safe now. I bring my Alexa around in my hotel room and I plug it in so I can set the alarm when I'm going to sleep. And I do wish she would turn off the lights. I'd also like to do things like check the traffic. And the reason for that is because I'm thinking before I get up, how much time do I have before my 9 a.m. meeting so that I can actually get and make my commute in time. And it would be nice as well if you can use those smart home functions to turn off the coffee pot. When you're getting ready, I think one thing is interesting is about where you put your smart speakers in the home. I now find that having an Alexa device in my bathroom is quite useful because my hands are busy doing things. I'm sometimes wanting to sort of plan my day or think about the to-do lists. I'm playing flash briefings. I like that short, concise compendium of information that is kind of suited there for me. Sometimes I do wish I could customize it even more for my particular needs. But I'm looking at notifications, I'm looking at my calendar. When I get to the office, I'm actually more likely to probably be on my desktop. I'm carrying my phone around, but I'm taking my desktop to meetings. I'm actually looking at my to-dos, my actions. I'm really trying to be productive. But there'll be times there in the office as well. And with also voice assistants coming in with, for example, Alexa for Business, where the office can be an echo could be in certain places to fulfill certain tasks. And then when I finally get home, I actually want to put my phone down, or I might just leave it somewhere, because those notifications, those work emails, they can be a little frustrating to sort of get, or they can interrupt, your family time. This is a time for catching up, being with family. I think it's quite interesting to see how quickly children take to talking to Alexa. In fact, find it quite fun. And then finally, unwinding, going to bed. Well, that's really the time to put down screen devices. Apple, I think, and some of the phone manufacturers are making a difference in how much brightness there is on a screen. But really putting those things down will help you unwind and relax. And so I challenge you as well to think about your daily journey and where you interact with these different devices, and not to just think of voice experiences in isolation. Think of them across the range of different modalities that you actually use and where you can tie them in. Because this finding the right moment, I think, is absolutely key to building something compelling in voice. So let's do a quick poll. Where do you think your smart speakers are predominantly in the home? Any guesses about, just shout out where you think that the most common location is in the home for a smart speaker. Living room. Kitchen, I heard living room. Bedroom. It turns out that a recent survey that the most common location for the smart speaker, and we're not just talking about Amazon Alexa, is actually in the living room, which I thought was quite interesting. Second place is actually the bedroom now. Now that might be because, at night, what I really like to do is tell Alexa good night, and I run a routine. She actually locks my front door if it's open, turns off my lights, and I can do it without reaching a switch. Now, these numbers add up to more than 100% because the respondents in this sometimes have more than one device. In fact, quite commonly, the second device isn't in these three locations. It's actually quite commonly in the home office now. And I expect there are good reasons for doing that. And then as you can see, there are other places where these get used: in the dining room, in the bathroom, in the kitchen, and the work office. So, this is constantly changing, and I think we're still in a real growth space. But if you think about ambient computing, there's going to be a time where you're going to expect to be able to talk to everything. Talk when you're on the way, things, certainly in your cars, wherever you are, when there's an appliance, you'll be wanting to interact with that using that most natural way, which is voice. I'd like to sum up this introductory section by just kind of going through what I think great self-service is, and really something that improves customer engagement. It's having that 360 view of your customers, really understanding their journey and their needs, and putting yourself in their shoes. It's also bringing easy access, 24/7 access, but also allowing me to express exactly the question I have and getting that precise answer without having to do any navigation. It's that right, direct, what we call a one-shot or a spear fishing for questions, getting those answers back. Make it personal without sort of overstepping, right? So if it can know me and know my habits and get my answers which are more pertinent to the combination of things that happen in my life and where I am, that's going to make a better and more compelling engagement. Making it smart and contextual, and there's been some really interesting stuff in this conference about making these applications smarter and more contextual using machine learning and AI. And that goes not only for, of course, the magic that happens inside of Alexa, it also goes for the actual back-end systems, which are recommending and are smarter and are getting smarter all the time. Once you've got that, what is exactly naturally conversational? Now, we all have conversations all the time. If I ask you, for example, where you're going to go on holiday next or what you want to do, we'll have a conversation and you'll interject things. You might tell me you hate traveling by plane. You might rather just be on a road trip or get in your RV. I'm not immediately, if you're thinking about voice commerce, I'm not immediately going to say, can I sell you a ticket? I'm going to have a conversation with you first. And we don't often, I think about making something naturally conversational that then will lead eventually to a purchase that is pertinent in that particular conversation. If you do all these things, I think you'll really truly differentiate your brand. And what you're looking to do is find those engagement moments. We're not trying to supplant the fact that mobile is really great in some instances. What we're trying to do is add a better customer experience that goes across all of these modalities. All right, so we're going to look at the very first use case, which is for an iconic brand. And I say iconic because if you think about the holidays, if I say, for example, the 4th of July, what brands do you think of? Maybe there's Bud, maybe there's Coca-Cola. If you actually think of the holidays, Butterball has really a great stake in Butterball in the holidays, in what you do together to bring the family together. So let's talk about them and how they came into sort of thinking about enabling self-service for all of the home chefs that actually want to prepare their turkeys. So I don't know about you, but I have been in this situation where I have suddenly 12 people coming around to my house. And you go to the store and you pick up this giant thing, massive, right? And you're like, well, I need a big enough turkey to actually cook so that it goes in my freezer. But I get to sort of a few days before and I'm really scratching my head like, what am I going to do with this thing? Is my oven even big enough? I'm sure you can identify with this. I think it's a good and interesting observation that humans do not always want to talk to other humans, but they do want the interaction to feel human. So I think that's astute because, often when I'm having a particular customer service problem, sometimes I'll go on chat because I'd rather do that because I can kind of like do other things while they're figuring out what my problem is. But there are also sometimes embarrassing questions or questions that you feel a bit foolish to ask, and it would be great if they can be handled by an assistant and a voice assistant. I think what's key though is making sure that voice assistant question and answer can also be transiently can go up to a human when it makes sense, and actually go back to a bot where it makes sense as well. So having that pertinent shift in conversation from automated to voice assistant and to human, I think is important. I think this is also true, for example, in medical fields where you might have a problem. You're just a bit embarrassed to talk about it or you want advice. So Butterball have been around since 1940. And in that time, they've actually evolved this thing which they call the toll-free Turkey talk line. Now, the Turkey talk line sounds like it's just a telephone, but they've actually evolved it over these modalities to encompass text, email, live chat, even social as well. And so, think of the talk line as a wider way of engaging. And their whole goal is to take some of the complexity out of cooking this big turkey. They actually even train their agents through Butterball University, which was really fun for us when we went to start to talk to them. We as a digital consultancy, we never expect to be able to have as much knowledge about the domain that we're working in, but we hope to learn from them. And what we did with this particular skill was we talked about their Butterball University assets and all of the questions in it, and all of the knowledge, the deep knowledge that their experts have. We also wanted to remember and reflect their mission that they want to have people enjoy great tasting foods and inspire joyful experiences that bring people together. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to 3 of the cool agents, the talk line experts. I'm going to roll a quick video because I think that they sum up what we did in a very short amount of time.
Every year, Butterball tries to reach people in a new and exciting way, and this year we're doing that through Alexa.
Alexa, open the Butterball skill. Hi, I'm Marge, a Butterball turkey talk line expert.
You can ask about planning, preparing,
cooking, or enjoying a turkey. What can I help with? Butterball used real turkey talk line experts, myself and my friends Marge and Christopher.
I'm very excited about this skill. You are going to get about 36 years of experience when you talk to Alexa. Alexa, ask Butterball, how long should I cook the turkey?
How do I stuff my turkey?
What is the bag inside my turkey?
Our main mission, every last one of us, is to be the helpful voice.
We're here for you, and we're going to help you host like a boss. You can get the Butterball skill on any of your Alexa-enabled devices. You can also call us at 1-800-BUTTERBALL, text us, or visit us at butterball.com.
We're here for you, right? So I think a really great message is that how can they be here for you wherever you are? So we had a really lot of fun talking to these experts and the personalities that came along with that. So let's look at the different components that come into building this skill. Now, we wanted to kind of go above the realm of just having an FAQ type skill, something that just dispenses information. But core in this experience is to answer those questions in a wide enough way. So say, for example, I'm asking about what temperature should I cook the turkey at? Then she would answer,
when cooking your turkey in an oven, preheat it to 325 degrees Fahrenheit.
So having ways that you can do these one-spot short spearfishing questions and answers, getting them back, but also having exploration and guided with category suggestions. It's important to have both. Also the calculators. If you think back to my problem of how big of a turkey I should buy or how long it's going to take to thaw, having those calculators where you can have these multi-turn interactions and quiz the assistant wherever you are, whenever you think about it, is really key to making something useful. And then also, I can't overstress that while this is voice first, that we actually use our eyes as well. And sometimes a picture speaks 1,000 words. If you're looking to figure out the best way to carve your turkey, or if you're trying to tell if your turkey is done, it's much easier to see that in a short clip in a video. So we infused as well some how-to videos that show up if you're on an Echo Show or a display device. The skill also has to be smart enough to know that when you're not on that device, you actually may not look at it. And so there are other ways you can do that, for example, through the Alexa companion cards. So I encourage you also to think about how can you use both the best of voice first, but also the screen devices in a voice plus manner. Then it was the infused audio, and you already heard.
Hello, this is Marge with the Butterball Turkey Talk Line.
Now, we worked with Butterball's agency, Edelman, and they were really great to actually collect all of the content. It's actually, I think, a really great way to connect your users and your customers with that brand and continue it on by recording responses and playing around with the different things that you can do to put the brand inside and have it speak in the voice of the brand you're talking about. Also, we want to engage those customers. We want to guide them, but not overdo it. And an example of that might be this.
Okay. The last topic I have is handling the neck and giblets. Would you like to learn about that?
Continuing that conversation, I think, is important. Helping the person know what next step they should take. Then also, if you think about bringing people together in a joyful environment, you really want to, bring it to life. So we actually injected the bios. They have some really funny stories that they've heard over the years, and we collected those and put them inside. So, I encourage you to listen to them. They'll definitely be fun. Now, they have definitely a moment during the holidays, but another part of their brand is that turkey can be a very healthy option, and they in fact have some engagement at other times this year besides the holidays. And so we put in some recipes and some inspiration to sort of eat healthily using turkey. And then also this last part is really about expecting the unexpected. It might be the animal treatment question, and Butterball do a lot to protect and treat animals well. Also, there's that thing inside that you often find, the plastic bag full of things that you're not sure what to do with. Or perhaps you've left the turkey out for too long and you're a bit scared about whether it might have gone off. So here's an example of when, though, for example, an unexpected question perhaps doesn't have an answer.
I'm not sure I can help you with that. If you'd like to speak with someone from Butterball about your question, please call 1-800-288-8372 or reach out through the Contact Us tab on butterball.com.
And wouldn't it be nice, and I think in the near future what we'll be able to find is that if there's a question that you're asking that can't be answered by the automated assistant, that it will be able to transfer you up and directly connect you to that talk line to give them your question in particular so they can respond to it wherever you are. So we think that with Butterball, with the Alexa skill, that we found a real moment in the kitchen where often your hands are dirty, tied up, doing other things, giving you the access to this turkey talk line, and to give you that hands-free advice while cooking, with calculators and conversions, answering those unexpected questions, and giving you instilling that confidence that you can host like a boss with those people and the voices of them to reassure you that what you're doing is right. Now, you might wonder about just an FAQ skill. Well, the folks at Butterball and Edelman, they were able to reinforce the sort of cultural relevancy of the turkey talk line. And they actually hit about 1 billion impressions across different media by promoting it. And so it really brought that new sort of brand relevancy that people could access their brand through a voice assistant. All right, so I'd like to switch my story now to a second use case, which I think is really interesting in the way that voice assistants can enable or help you tackle voice commerce. Think about for a minute, if you're a moviegoer, where do you think about what's playing and what's playing next? I went to see a couple of movies last weekend, and I'm quite glad I saw the Avengers Endgame because of Robert Downey Jr. who came on stage. But I'm thinking about this, as I walk around sometimes if I'm driving. And Atom Tickets have done a lot of careful thinking. Their mission statement is to help movie lovers both discover and buy tickets wherever and however they want. So in talking with their principal product manager, Eric, he actually said that it's really in their DNA to be early adopters of new technology that would help with this mission. And so it absolutely made sense to have the option of hands-free movie ticketing with Alexa. Their audience is extremely savvy. They're sort of the digitally savvy natives. They're used to using their mobile phones. They have no fear of new technology. And the brand itself is supported by Lionsgate, Disney, Fidelity Management and Research, and they actually support over 21,000 screens in the US. They have a superb mobile app, and they could have just rested on their laurels and decided that they weren't going to use or do anything further. That mobile app, I just checked, is almost 100,000 ratings and a really high score, and it's a great app. It helps you with the entire journey of actually buying movie tickets, sharing them with your friends, and also doing the purchase. You can purchase also on these different social channels too. And then finally, like, the ability to scan your tickets either on your watch or through your email QR code. So in thinking about all this, we were like tackling this problem of how do we do something that really brings that same voice assistant when perhaps your hands are tied. Think about any particular voice commerce experience for a minute. Okay, so typically anything you're going to buy, it starts off with a step where you're browsing and selecting. Perhaps you're not sure. You're thinking about what to buy, but at some point you may have made a buying decision. Once you've made that decision, you sort of want the payment to be as seamless and as easy as possible. And so the actual purchase and delivery has to be sort of fairly easy. You might think about this particular problem. There's probably two kinds of users. The first is, scratching their head a bit and wanting inspiration, doesn't quite know what to see. But the second has a very clear idea of exactly what they want to buy. And you want to be able to serve these two, easily and in both manners, not always force them through some, big exploration or navigation. For that user who doesn't know what to see, we're going to have to get some information, at least their location, right? Their zip code or the town that they are. Once we have that, we can then let them browse. We can actually give them a list of what's playing. We can give new releases and make some recommendations. And from that, we'll have a list of different suggestions. Now, by voice isn't actually very good for giving a huge array of different choices. So, you have to be thinking carefully about what are the top 3 things that they might want to do, or might want to see in this case, and be able to allow them to sort of, scroll through those in a, voice way if you imagine you're driving. Once you've made that selection, then you're kind of you've become user B, right? You've made that selection. And from there, and that buying decision, you're then going to, really start to look at the date, the time, the theater choice, which particular seats you want to make, how many people are going to be in the party, and potentially also reserve some seats. That then leads to payment, which then is going to send you those tickets. And hopefully in this experience, if you change your mind, you can kind of cancel, which is, if you're going to have things delivered, you should be able to send them back. So this particular model, the one below, is kind of the movie tickets one, but I think it's fairly common in any voice experience you're going to be putting there. It might be, for instance, browsing a product catalog instead. Before we actually look at the components that made this experience, let's think about the commerce options on Amazon Alexa. So there's the traditional method, which is account linking. This is, in fact, a way that you'll tie your voice session with perhaps an account that you already have. So a good example of account linking is, for example, connecting to the rideshare account that you already have. Maybe reordering Domino's pizza. That would be another way. And this is kind of like a roll your own. So everything you do in this regard, you're going to have built already or have to expose again by connecting your Alexa session with your other account. There's another method which is very useful when you're looking to basically unlock new features or perhaps show new premium content. And this is called in-skill purchase. And think about this is just like when you have a mobile app and you suddenly decide that you want some new features, so you're willing to pay a bit more money to get those features. This is sort of the same thing in the voice domain. And then the third way is using Amazon Pay on Alexa. And this is the one that we chose, and I'll tell you some of the good reasons why. So this is frictionless payment in that it doesn't require you to actually do that account linking and type in that password and connect it to the other account. It simply uses the existing Amazon account that you probably all have set up. In fact, last time I spoke with somebody in the Amazon shopping, they said that the actual Amazon app is on 250 million phones or more. And so most of us have connected our Amazon accounts, and we can mostly already buy on Amazon. And if you can do that, you can also do the same within the skill. There's then a standardized experience, and so it does all the heavy lifting of making sure that, for example, if your credit card expired, it will actually remind you to go and update that. So the flow is standardized. There's also, in the realm of permission granting, You simply give that, if you've already set up purchase by voice, it uses the same one. So if you have an optional PIN, for example, that you set up to do the purchase, then it would be exactly the same one. And there's a one-time grant on a per skill basis as well that lets you enable that skill for voice payment. I think security is important to think about what exactly are you allowing them to buy by voice. So in this realm, I mentioned the optional PIN. It can now be tied to a speaker profile so that different people can have different PINs. I think it was very interesting that when the Capital One banking app first came on, if you look at the privacy and the terms of use, it says make sure you don't say your PIN where anyone else can hear it. So I think that there's some ways to go about what you might have to do in the realm of security. And what we thought about for Atom tickets was we should probably set some per user and per transaction dollar limits just to kind of prevent misuse of it. Let's look at the components of the Atom tickets experience. So what you can see here is a bit more of a drill down on what I already showed you, moving from sort of left to right, that you'll find the location, the movie name. Remember, this data now is real time, so in the realm of movie tickets, it really does depend on the here and now. Tonight what's showing might be different than if I do the same thing tomorrow. Also, the advice and also the ticketing choices are real time and they vary across different theaters. And so there's actually quite a lot more to think about. But the point here isn't to sort of frighten you from the experience, but just to let me say that you can focus on building out the experience components in the best way. You'll be thinking about ways you can personalize this experience. You'll want to also think about session resumption. If I'm online on a web app, I'll have a cart that will stay there for a while. If I walk away and come back to that browser, that cookie is probably still in there. We have to think about similar things that go on in voice. And we get distracted from a voice session and the session can time out. So knowing about how to deal with the various scenarios about when you go back is important. The buying part is, again, a lot of the heavy lifting is handled by Amazon Pay. We have to make sure that there's some common user identity. When we actually permission and grant the Amazon Pay, we'll get the user ID, and we want to make sure that we're sending tickets to that user. And we also want to give them the ability to purchase the tickets, get the tickets, and also be able to cancel them as well. One of the features I thought it would be interesting just to kind of briefly talk about was about reserved seating. So let's do that now. What is reserved seating? Well, reserved seating is a key brand differentiator for Atom tickets. It allows you to basically reserve seating, and I live in San Francisco now, and if you go to a popular movie, it's really critical for me that I reserve the tickets I want. In other places where it's maybe not so busy, perhaps it's not so much of an issue, but it certainly is in areas where there's a lot of people going to the same movies. So you want a real-time indication of the best available seating. So we had to think about this in a voice-first manner. How can you do this without potentially looking at the screen? So the inputs for this are the theater, the showing, of course the number of seats, and then Atom Tickets gave us an API that allowed us to, in real time, check the booking systems and see how many tickets were available, so that they could indicate to us how full the theater was. Would those seats be together? And then offer us that information so that we could make a buying decision. If I feel a little unsure, then I might actually decide to see another showing. Or indeed, I might just actually go ahead and buy them. If I look for another showing, then I've sort of been in control of this. And so it gives me some confidence that not only can I cancel, I can also go look for other showings and get this advice. So, this is really just to highlight that if you're thinking about voice, try not to just think of it in the sense that you would with mobile or with online. Think about those places where you're really trying to create a voice-first experience. What do we learn from this? And there were definitely some deep insights that we got. And I think an important part of voice commerce experiences is that you really want the user to feel comfortable that they've actually bought when they've bought. And this goes for handling those payment errors gracefully when your card expired, the the abandonment problem. Somebody got so far and they were about to purchase tickets and they trailed off and moved away. You've got to be able to resume that session, but perhaps the time and place is now, your reserved ticket advice is now not so pertinent anymore. So when do you purge that and let them start again in an intelligent way? That's the session resumption problem. And also remember that cancel often means stop, exit. But in the case for voice commerce, cancel can have multiple meanings in multiple places in the experience. It's not just, cancel out of this skill. It might be cancel, down the path of the purchase. We also want to think about that security. Is there sufficient security in the system so that basically people who might be knowing the optional passwords and PINs, have we put in adequate protection or at least ways to refund that money quickly or for you to be notified of it? Remember also that you might be integrating with APIs that have been built for other purposes like mobile, like online. And with voice, you don't actually want for a response to take too long. You want it to come back quickly. So you may have to recraft some of your APIs, make the payloads smaller, really ensure that the response times are going to work for a voice assistant. And what we did prove to ourselves and what we learned was that Amazon Pay truly did reduce the integration and the time to actually deliver this experience because we could focus on all of those components that were about building that best experience for the user. Atom Tickets really felt that they actually caught another moment. And like I said, they could have just rested on their laurels and thought, oh, we have a great voice, we have a great mobile experience, it's got great ratings, we don't need to do this. But they're actually thinking about, more holistically about where their users are. So again, I challenge you, if you're a brand, be thinking about where is your moment? If there's a time, for example, where people are talking about your brand, but you're not there, then you're sort of missing out on an opportunity, and one of your competitors will. Kristen from Atom Tickets said that they're basically testing other experiences with voice commands, which go beyond the home to the car, which enable drivers to safely plan ahead with easy purchasing options. So they see a definitely opportunity where hands are tied up and where they're not free. All right, so we're in the last section of this, and I want to kind of bring it back a little bit to perhaps what you're thinking about is how will you get started in voice? Let's see, maybe a show of hands. Who is thinking about a voice initiative, about doing something new in voice? Okay, that's encouraging, good, great. Well, just let me briefly cover some additional lessons learned, because I think that these have come from a wealth of experience that we've gained with different customers and brands across many different verticals, besides CPG, besides ticketing in other realms. They actually stem from great voice design. There's still, I would say, a lot of debate about what great voice design is. It's funny though, because we can all have great conversations, but when you turn it around and try and build something that is truly conversational, it can still be challenging. There are some tenets of this though, making sure that you have ample utterances. And I'd say that whatever you build, make sure that you actually really test it and have people that are using the experience, because I think very quickly you'll ascertain as to whether it's effective and if it's good or not. Utterances is just the way people express certain things. And it's amazing, even if you think you've designed all the things that you think people can say, you put 10 people in front of that and ask them to do something and do a task, and you'll come up with brand new ways of doing that. Sufficient intent is, have you actually created enough scope for your skill to be truly useful and to basically meet that match of expectation from the user? And I think often voice assistant experiences will fall down if you actually haven't preconceived the scope properly or set those expectations. Having proper contextual help as well and prompts, making sure that you have sufficient one-shots, multi-turn interactions, and I think a big thing that people fall into is that they dwell on what they think is the happy path. And I've heard it said that actually there is really no happy path in voice design. That, anytime you have a conversation, it can go in different directions. And that's a real skill, I think, is to kind of think about the breadth of different ways you can interact. On the other side, I think that there's an engagement side which can really help retention. And those are to use Alexa's voice, but also inject other ways. Amazon Polly, the short form audio. Make that experience much more relevant so that Alexa has a place, but then there's other voices that you might be thinking about. What is your brand? And I think this gives you a great opportunity to think about exactly who is the voice of your brand. Do you have a spokesperson? What's the tone of your brand as well? And what we're finding is now that the old talents of radio and screenplay and writing is actually really becoming important. And so if you have people who do that for fun, or if you need to hire talent, I think this is time for those people to come back to really infuse better experiences and build that retention and adoption, to vary that copy in your brand's voice. And when I think about news or podcasts, I'm always listening to the same ones when I know that there'll be compelling and definitely different content. I think finally in this, the apt use of screens. And I've heard it said that this is kind of coined by a term, glanceability. I'm not sure if that's a word, but this basically means that there'll be times where I might be able to glance at a screen device. And certainly the adoption of screen devices is really taking off. And you can see that other manufacturers are getting into that realm as well, where screens are being paired with voice as well. So I'd ask you as well to start thinking critically about your data and about your users and about what you could do. Who are those users? Which ones should be focusing on? What are they asking? And how do they engage? And I suppose importantly, where do they engage? Where is their friction? So, I think we're very good about being frustrated with certain things that aren't right. But do we write those down and then turn them around and think how to fix them? Or do we just try and reproduce the experiences that we have? Definitely think about what the users need across these different channels. Voice is not going to be good for everything. And in fact, you probably shouldn't try and think about an online or a mobile experience and just try and turn it into a voice one. That's not how I would recommend approaching this. It's about thinking about the different channels and where they make most sense. Basically, I think this boils down to what are those moments that you could own, that you could actually potentially even start a new business on. Well, you might say, well, Jonathan, why should I really even care about any of this? I think it's interesting to look at the US smart speaker installed base, the number of adults who are engaging, and this is as of January 2019. So in 2018, there were about 47.3 million adults who were engaged with smart speakers. And then in 2019, it went all the way up to 66.4, and this is across the smart speaker domain. Now, typically, brands engage or really start to engage in a significant way when it crosses that 15 million users mark. And so it certainly has done that now. And I think it's interesting. If you go to how long does it take to hit 50 million users by Visual Capitalist, they have a really interesting graph with airplanes and ATMs. And it kind of shows you that it took 50 years to cross 50 million users for telephone. All the way up for TV for 22 years, all the way up to smart speakers, really just in the last 3 years. And so this modality is still very new, but it certainly is now time, and especially in the US, that we're definitely in the majority adoption phase for smart speakers. And so if you're not there now is a really great time to be thinking about it. Let's broaden this a little bit more to use cases that we're seeing across other industry verticals. So we're seeing in banking that there are definitely ones where you might be doing things and you just want to find out if you potentially spent something, or maybe your wife, maybe she spent something and you want to find out quickly while you're making dinner. Then also in restaurants, I think some of the natural things you think about is reordering. We're actually, though, seeing also that there are use cases besides consumers, which are, in the back of the kitchen efficiency type things about inventory. So, this isn't only limited to consumers and users and things, but also to ways you can improve productivity or do something quicker. In travel, I think there are some use cases that we've seen. For example, getting the flight status. As you're packing the bag and starting to wonder about when you should get to the airport, wouldn't it be nice to get some advice on traffic, on timing, so that you could collectively feel comfortable that you can get there, get through security, and maybe have a beer before you get on the plane. And insurance as well. We definitely have heard some use cases, or at least some insurance agencies who at least first thought about maybe filing a claim via voice. But in fact, I would say that that's not actually the best way to actually, to do it by voice. But perhaps getting policy information. And also we're seeing some use cases with, for example, appraisers who want to assess damage and they're walking around a house. Perhaps the right way to do that is not using a mobile app or an iPad, it's actually to speak it. In hospitality, I mentioned Alexa for Business, but we're seeing use cases across businesses, in conference rooms, in continuous care retirement communities, in hospitals, any place where you want to access service. For patients, for example, who aren't able to use their hands as well, to be able to have amenities in the room. Also, in industry, I think there are many use cases that are going to arise where, for example, you're doing things that are very manual. You're walking around, you're checking inventory, you want to do sort of factory tasks where your hands are either dirty or perhaps you just don't have them for free. Healthcare, I think this year is going to begin to take off as we saw 6 new HIPAA compliant, and I think the eligibility of Alexa is happening, and we're going to see a lot of those use cases where we're helping people in chronic conditions, or we're helping them connect to their care teams to get information that's relevant and pertinent to them. And as I sort of said before, I think we're going to see an increasing number of in-vehicle use cases, which is a natural place for voice, right? Because, if you think about it, Americans on average spend 35 minutes in their cars on commute time. And, you could say it's one of those times, one of those places where you have a real opportunity to enable people to interact with your business through voice. So there's going to be some due diligence, and this doesn't just come easily with all these things. If you follow this, you're still going to have to strive for some success. I would say, you have to definitely follow, good recommendations for building good publishing information, making sure that your skill descriptions are pertinent and they lead people to expect things correctly. And then also aid with discoverability through name-free interactions. There's a capability which you could probably look up. It's called Can Fulfill Intent Request. And what that does is it lets Alexa, the platform, know to route that particular command to your skill. And so it can help with some of that discoverability. Act on the analytics, act on the skill, the feedback coming in the store. And also revisit the scope and test and test and test again. I'm actually, I don't know if you wondered where I'm from Edinburgh, Scotland, and I was a pupil in Scotland. And we were taught in class that King Robert the Bruce was in a cave watching a spider trying to weave a web. And eventually it kind of made this web. And he went out and told his troops that if at first you don't succeed, try, and try again. And he went on, of course, to win the Battle of Bannockburn, outnumbered in odds by 10-1. So I'd say, take that try, and try again, and be consistent and persistent, and promote as you would any other channel. In fact, you're going to probably have to promote more so than any other thing because you're trying to change behavior. Let's briefly talk about the bright future for voice automation. So I think as we move forward, we're going to see that that Alexa is going to get more naturally conversational. And I'm excited to see that the fact that these skills can break down, we're beginning to see the new announcement where you can break down the walls so that one skill isn't just in a walled garden and it's in isolation. Talking appliances, I mentioned, and in-vehicle use cases are going to really move up. And I think the seamless transitions between voice and humans and back again is going to happen more seamlessly and within third-party skills that you might build. I think the next area kind of falls down to enhanced security and speaker recognition, tying these things together to make them more contextual, more personal, and also have more AI in the applications themselves. And then finally, I think that what we'll see is that really building in some of that emotion and comprehension of exactly the things that you're saying and their understanding of that, and even transitioning that into, for example, Amazon Sumerian, to have these virtual agents that can read body language. There's a lot of exciting areas, and certainly there's a lot on the slide, but if you want to talk more about it, we'll be in the kiosk at Mobiquity's kiosk number 2. So I'd like to leave you today with 4 main takeaways as you kind of embark on this. How do I devise my journey and start to build something new in voice? So I hope I've kind of convinced you a little bit that the technology is here today. There's certainly enough to get going, and we've passed that point of 50 million users. So don't delay. But it is hard. It doesn't necessarily come easily. So find a partner. We're here to help you. There's many other partners as well. We'll help you devise that strategy, think about how we can reuse your assets, and craft something that might be effective. You're going to have to also do that work to really know your users and find those moments of engagement and think about those moments of engagement alongside the other modalities that you already have. Don't just get focused on the voice assistant and then forget about the mobile. There are probably ways to weave them together that you need to be thinking about. And finally, drive adoption by trying. Try, and try again. You may not meet your first success in the first go around, but you'll learn a lot. And going from that first is the beginning of a journey. That journey is something that you need to persevere with and dedicate potentially a team to, and being in it for the long run. So thank you very much. That's the end of this session. I'd like to remind you to fill out the survey if you have time, but I'll take any questions. Thank you.